Standard bannings for the first time since
crazy.
artifacts were printed for the first time.
That's not true.
That was mirrored. I was reading Mark Rosewater's Tumblr all day today instead of doing work, and the number
He's
of people...
He's not lying. He literally spends all day reading Mark Rosewater's Tumblr.
The number of people who were sending him questions that were like, is this banning because it's an artifact set and artifact sets are stupid? And I was like, yes, they are stupid. And he's like, yes, they are. He didn't say that. No.
Your booster seat is really noticeable.
He's like these. I know, I love it. Basically, the last time this happened was 6 years ago. Almost 6 years ago.
Yeah, it feels, 6.
Yeah, so it's been a while. They banned 3 cards from Standard. Yep. 3 distinctly different cards, which is also very interesting because the last 2 times they made bans, they were all from the same deck.
Very specifically targeted to get rid of one thing.
They banned about 30 cards out of Mirrodin, but they were all in Affinity. And then they also banned 2 cards from World Wake that were both in Callblade. They banned Emrakul, they banned Smuggler's Copter, and they banned Reflector Mage. They have what I think is the most obvious, and I think generally people have agreed it's the most obvious, which is Smuggler's Copter. We know it was pushed on purpose.
Correct.
We know it was pushed because vehicles are cool and they wanted to make vehicles powerful. And to be honest with you, I think they went a little bit too far with this, but I'm still happier that they made vehicles cool, whereas like there are a lot of times that the flagship mechanic of a set just falls flat. And in recent times you got like ingest process. Like they didn't quite support it enough. You know what I mean? And
it was pretty weak.
The next card we've got is Emrakul.
Yeah.
Emrakul makes me sad to see it banned, but I can't really argue with it for very long. It's like, I get it.
At first I was a little bit upset because I was like, oh man, why couldn't they just ban Marvel? I was actually spending mana on it.
I know.
Because I was playing it wasn't Black Green, but I realized, no, they do have to ban it because if they didn't ban it, nothing would happen to Black Green Delirium and it would just be the best deck. And they had to, if they're going to knock off the one thing that can beat Black Green Delirium, which is the Marvel deck, they got to also hit the Black Green Delirium deck, so I understand why.
Yeah, and there's certainly something to be said for when they make a ban, they want to destroy as few decks as possible. Ideally, they destroy 0 decks. So I'm sitting here and I'm like, well, I was playing T-Merge, and T-Merge was a deck around Emrakul.
There's a red-white control deck with like Nahiri and stuff, and you could get a lot of card types in your graveyard, just cast it sometimes. Sometimes you cheat it out with Nahiri, and without that, the deck becomes a lot worse.
I'm sad that like our decks are dead now. They're dead.
Yeah.
But a lot more people were playing Aetherworks Marvel than our 2 decks combined.
Oh,
so
no,
it makes sense. Right, so it makes sense.
We were probably the only people, honestly.
Exactly. So, like, to merge was cool for a week.
Yeah.
And then I'm the only person who kept playing it after that. Like, killing Aetherworks Marvel would kill more people's decks, even if it would kill less strategic decks in that sense. So I think it makes sense. Now,
well, I do think Marvel is dead.
I don't think it's dead. I think people are going to overestimate how dead it is, and then it's going to come back. Because honestly, at the end of the day, the second most powerful creature is always going to be close in power level to the most powerful creature. So you know what I mean? Like, Ulamog's really not that far off in power.
Well,
to
really,
Emrakul,
you're not actually replacing the first with the second.
You're playing the first with the third, right? Yeah, right. And the third card they banned was Reflector Mage.
Yes.
Which is bizarre.
Well, so if you look at it, that card was bonkers. Oh, of course they Coco'd into 2 Reflector
They always
Mages.
do.
They always have it.
They always do.
Every time.
I can no longer Mindslaver somebody with Emrakul, then Reflector Mage my own Emrakul and Mindslaver them again.
Was so fun to do.
It was so fun. It was usually the wrong line of play, but I did it every time I could.
It says you can't cast it until your next turn.
Right.
So you Reflector Mage it, then they take their next turn, and then your next turn, you just cast the Emrakul. You aren't
Which
stuck
is pretty
with
great.
your
Yeah,
hand
you
at
don't
all.
lose a turn of Emrakul, which is pretty sweet. Channel Fireball dude who just wrote the article that he said, like, what terrifies me about the modern banning. No, it was a new guy. He just did it. He was Player of the Year. Mike Segrist? Mike Segrist, yeah. Mike Segrist. He was saying, remember that time Snapcaster Mage, Mana Leak, and Geist of Saint Traft were all legal in the same deck? Like, that was absurd. Invisible Stalker, which is one of the most frustrating cards they've ever printed. Like, it with Runechanter's Pike and crap that you're just throwing on. And Delver! Like, this deck! It wasn't as unfun.
No.
And so he goes back and he cites the official statements from the last 2 bannings. And he says they specifically cited fun, and they specifically cited player attendance. And so you can easily correlate those 2 things, fun and player attendance. Whereas balance does not necessarily equal fun. As a great League of Legends quote once said, if we wanted our game to be perfectly balanced, everybody would just play Garen. but that would be boring. Mm-hmm. So we don't do that because variety and perfect imbalance, as they say. I don't know who coined that phrase. I think it was certainly T, actually, who said the perfect imbalance. This one didn't say player attendance. They did not mention player attendance. They didn't mention any sort of business angle like that, like they normally do. But what they did mention... It was
heavily implied.
Right. It was heavily implied, specifically when you go back to the other ones, you look at other than that, the language matches up perfectly. But he's like, they said fun like 8 times in this short paragraph. And one of the things they specifically said was, Reflector Mage has been on people's lists of least enjoyable cards. That toughness, that 3 toughness, is surprisingly big these days. 3 damage is harder to kill than it used to be. You know, in my day, we had things like Incinerate and Volt Charge, but...
They did just reprint Spark.
They did just reprint Spark, which, by the way, doesn't kill Reflector Mage. I know. And would in no way contribute to that. Yeah.
Because it's like, well, we have Galvanic Bombardment, but that can't hit players.
They did print Hungry Flames, which Hungry Flames is like, I think, the unsung hero of Aether Revolt.
Really?
Yeah. No, I love that card. It's 3 mana instant speed, deal 3 damage to a creature and 2 damage to a player. Is it balanced? Is this a good for balance? And as Mike Segrist pointed out, he said, this horrifies me. This is a bold business decision. And companies like Wizards of the Coast, who have had the top spot for a long time, don't make bold business decisions until they're losing the top spot. And he's like, that worries me. Because he's like, this is not just the first bold decision they've made in a while. This is a number. This is just a number in a long line of bold decisions. And
if you think about the whole Expedition, Masterpiece series, that's pretty big.
Yeah, I mean, 2-set cycle was huge. Huge. When we were switching to 2 sets, there was a time when we had 1 set from a 3-set block legal.
Yeah.
And the other 2 weren't. And like that was just horrifyingly confusing for everybody. Because after a point, who remembers what was in Dragons of Tarkir versus Fate Reforged? Like, nobody. You know what I mean?
You almost just didn't even remember what Fate Reforged was
Right, I'm
called.
like, which was the middle one? It didn't have Tarkir in it? Fate of Tarkir? I don't know. Like, gotta hate Tarkir. The writing on the walls is not necessarily good. And people aren't going to Standard. They don't like Standard anymore. So, I want to know, Dave.
The book, it's shifted.
I want to know, Dave, for somebody who's played...
You guys can't see it, but he's sitting on like 12 rolls of toilet paper because like
so I look taller
down there.
Because otherwise I just wouldn't be in frame with the Sky Sovereign, and we needed Sky Sovereign in frame. Would you feel that this standard is drastically different? Because from someone like me who's played a lot of games that iterate more rapidly than Magic even, like League of Legends, I feel like there are good, there are bad. Trying to decide them is largely of personal preference, and it's very rare that you can objectively say this format, this metagame is bad. But a lot of people seem to say it was.
Tough. It's really hard to say because, for example, one of my favorite standard formats was the one with Theros and Return to Ravnica. And a lot of people didn't like that. They didn't like that at all because essentially there were 3 decks that were correct to play in that format. Blue-white control, mono-black, and mono-blue.
Right.
There weren't other colors.
Yeah. What's really interesting, really fascinating, Mike just points this out, is that when they banned Caw-Blade, they held back on banning Caw-Blade because they said, this is a 1-deck format, basically.
Yep.
They're like, we recognize this is a 1-deck format, but we want to see if people like that. Because they might. Should the developers define the metagame? And it's always a question of like, well, you want to let players experiment. You don't always want to steer them because sometimes they might discover something that you didn't plan on.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad that they did something about it. I'm glad that they also swapped up some stuff in Modern as well.
Yeah. The Modern bans seem... obvious,
yeah.
Especially next to the just earth-shattering drop that is Standard bans.
Yeah,
you not only see Modern bans, but you see extremely tame Modern bans.
Yeah,
like
I am so glad that Gitaxian Probe is banned. That card is ridiculously poorly designed.
It is. It is
just
horrible.
Really bad. There is for essentially what amounts to 0 resource investment. You pay 2 life, which is the cheapest resource that you have access to.
It's true.
You can see what's in your opponent's hand, so if you're playing a combo deck, which a lot of times the decks with the Gitaxian Probe are, you no longer have to play around anything. You know if they have it, you know if they don't have it. It takes a large part of the skill out of the game. You just can see, okay, they have no removal, I'm just going to kill them now. I don't have to play it cautious or anything like that. You don't go down a card, it goes through your deck faster. A lot of decks are playing 56-card decks. On top of that, you gain a resource from doing this.
You gain a number of resources, actually.
Card that is now in your graveyard.
You gain even more than that. You gain a spellcast, which is very relevant to a lot of decks.
Super relevant.
You gain a card in your graveyard, which is relevant to everybody because Delve is a thing.
Yep. Delve, Snapcaster
right?
Mage, all sorts of
And you actually gain loss of life.
But if you're playing the Death Shadow deck, you gained a resource.
Right, you gained a resource. You actually, like, Death Shadow,
it's
you literally lose
a 0-mana
nothing.
ritual. It really is a 0-mana ritual.
You lose nothing. It's stupid. It was just, I don't think anybody...
Yeah, especially when you talk about Delve, you're adding mana to your mana pool when you cast it.
Golgari Grave Troll, I mean, I don't even think there needs to be a discussion there. It's like, it was banned for a reason the first time.
They tried it out.
Yeah.
It was fine. It actually didn't do anything until they printed...
Prize Amalgam.
Prize Amalgam and Cathartic Reunion. Those two cards really set it over the edge, and they needed to tone it back some more. Maybe it kills the deck, maybe it doesn't, but that makes sense. The fact that Dredge was so powerful and people just really needed the graveyard hate to beat it, it also stifled all of the other graveyard decks that could exist because they weren't as powerful as Dredge, and people were already packing, a lot of times even main deck hate, just to deal with this gigantic menace that was Dredge, because otherwise it's like, oh, turn 2, now I've got the 10 power in play, how are you going to deal with that? You can't Pyroclasm it.
Let's say that there are 4 graveyard decks that are competitive in Modern.
Sure.
If one of them is drastically more, if all 3 of them on a scale of 1 to 10 are a 5 power level, which let's say theoretically we want every deck to be a 5 power level.
Sure.
If 3 of them are 5 and one of them is a 10, now you're actually cutting out 3 decks, and by adding the graveyard hate, like by weakening this one, you're allowing those other decks to shine because now people aren't going to incidentally be hating on those decks as much. Maybe there's a graveyard deck you really like, I don't know, I mean, maybe you're somebody who's obsessed with, I don't know, pick another graveyard deck that isn't bullshit.
Martyr Proc.
Maybe you like Martyr Proc. I will actually give you that. Living End, that's bullshit. Corio's Vengeance is bullshit. Martyr Proc, it's like, now you're not incidentally getting hated by some other deck, which is great. I would have...
Junt, like, you're getting, like, your Tarmogoyfs are getting wrecked.
It's true, yeah, your Tarmogoyfs are getting wrecked, and, like, I mean, so are... And
it's just a dumb
and so
creature,
are your
who cares?
And so are your Lingering Souls.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, that's the other Jund deck.
White
Jund.
White Jund.
Shiny Jund.
Pale Jund.
Pale Jund, yeah. Faded Jund. Left it out in the sun too long. Yeah, right. So, Bleach Jund. Ooh, Frosted Tips, Frosted Jund. Frosted Mini Jund.
That implies blue. Frosted implies blue.
Yeah, but Frosted Tips... Frosted Mini Wheats, they don't have blue, they have white on them. All right,
Blueberry Frosted Mini Wheats do.
Well, yeah, but we're not calling it Blueberry Jund, which would have blue in it. Like, I almost would have had bolder Modern bans to maybe take some of the heat off the standard bans.
Interesting.
Yeah,
like,
because...
What would you ban?
All right, listen, if it was up to me in charge of Modern, I would have the most aggressive bottom.
One more. Name one more. You got to limit to one.
Fetch lands.
That is really bold.
Mirrodin.
That's not one card.
Every core set.
You just... First of all, you started with 10 cards, right? And then you went up to an entire...
And then I went to 3 sets.
Oh, you went...
No, sorry. Mirrodin block. Let me change that to Mirrodin the Plane. 6 sets. Let me up it again to every core set. Chandelar. I'd like to ban Chandelar. Can we ban Chandelar?
It's not even a set.
No, but it's a plane. Oh, man. Then we get rid of every Titan. Right? Who's sick of playing against Inferno Titan? I am.
You're an idiot.
5/9. This is insane for 5 mana.
That's so hard to kill.
That is double the Jedi Curve toughness, almost.
You can't Lightning Bolt that.
You can't Lightning Bolt that. You can't roast it.
The only way to kill this is to roast
Snapcaster
Mage,
roast. That is the only way to kill this card, and that still costs 2 cards. And then, what happens to the Snapcaster Mage? I don't know. When you play the second Meandering Tower Shell, how's it going to get past that 5/9? It's not going to happen.
Can't do it.
Now, more importantly, though, than the stats on this card, it has Island Walk. So that Snapcaster player, unblockable.
Can't block it.
Cannot block it because he's got Island